The damaged ship appeared on Earth's defense scanners like a ghost. It was moving slowly through the outer solar system, barely holding together. Commander Jake Morrison stared at his screen and knew immediately that something was wrong. The ship design was completely alien. Nothing like the few distant observations humans had made of other species. Its hull looked organic, with smooth curves that pulsed with a faint purple glow. That glow was getting weaker with each passing minute. Jake commanded the patrol vessel Discovery, stationed near Jupiter to watch for exactly this kind of situation. For 300 years, humanity had known that aliens existed. They had detected signals, watched distant ships, and understood one clear message from the stars. Earth was not welcome. The Galactic Council had declared humanity too violent and dangerous for contact. They had put Earth under quarantine, warning that any attempt to leave the solar system would be met with force. Now an alien ship was dying right in front of him, and Jake had to make a choice. He ordered his communications officer, Lisa Chen, to try every frequency they had. It took 20 minutes, but finally they received a response. The translator software that Earth's scientists had built from analyzed alien broadcasts struggled with the language, but the meaning came through clearly enough. The aliens were refugees. They were being hunted. They needed help and they had nowhere else to go. Lisa looked at Jake with wide eyes. This was not supposed to happen. Earth had protocols for many situations, but harboring alien refugees was not one of them. If they helped these aliens, the Galactic Council might see it as an act of war. Earth's defenses were nothing compared to the weapons of civilizations that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. Jake thought about his daughter back on Earth. He thought about every news report he had ever seen about refugees turned away from borders, left to die in the cold or the heat or the sea. Humanity had spent centuries arguing about who deserved help and who did not. Those arguments had cost millions of lives and filled the history books with shame. He made his decision in less than a minute. They would help. The Discovery moved closer to the alien vessel, and Jake got his first clear look at it. The ship was beautiful despite its damaged state. It looked like it had been grown rather than built, with sweeping lines that reminded him of seashells and coral. Parts of the hull were cracked, leaking atmosphere and energy. He could see aliens moving inside through the transparent sections, their bodies glowing with that same purple light. Jake ordered his crew to extend their docking tube, and they made contact with the alien ship. The atmosphere inside was breathable for humans, though it smelled strange, like copper and flowers. The temperature was cold enough to see their breath. The first alien Jake met stood about 6 feet tall with translucent blue skin. Under that skin, patterns of light moved and pulsed, like living art. The alien had 2 arms, 2 legs, and a face that was almost human, except for the large eyes that reflected light like a cat's. When it spoke, the sounds were soft and musical, but lights also flashed along its forearms in complex patterns. Lisa worked with the translation software, and slowly they began to understand. The alien's name translated to something like Whisper of Dawn. The alien was an elder of the Keltheran people, and the ship carried the last 2,000 members of their species. The rest were dead, killed by something called the Vryn Empire. Whisper of Dawn explained their story in simple terms that even the struggling translator could handle. The Keltheran had lived peacefully on 3 colony worlds for 500 years. They were scientists, artists, and farmers. They had never threatened anyone. But the Vryn, one of the most powerful species in the Galactic Council, had declared the Keltheran genetically impure. It was a lie, but lies did not need to be true to be dangerous. The Vryn had come with warships and destroyed the Keltheran worlds. Cities that had stood for centuries were burned. Millions died in the first few days. The Keltheran were not warriors. They had no weapons that could stand against the Vryn military. All they could do was run. The Keltheran sent messages to every member of the Galactic Council begging for help. They asked for asylum, for protection, for anyone to speak up against the genocide happening in front of the galaxy's eyes. No one helped. Some species said they were sorry but could do nothing. Others said the Keltheran must have done something to deserve their fate. Most said nothing at all. The Council had laws about genetic purity. Species that were too different, too changed, too unpredictable were considered threats. The Keltheran had a mutation that appeared in some of their children, a small change that made their bioluminescence brighter and more complex. The Vryn claimed this mutation would weaken the genetic strength of the galaxy if it spread. It was nonsense, but it was nonsense that the council accepted because accepting it was easier than standing up to the Vryn. Jake listened to all of this and felt anger burning in his chest. He had grown up learning about the Holocaust, about Rwanda, about all the times in human history when people had looked away while others were murdered. He had promised himself that if he ever had the power to stop such things, he would use it. Now he had that chance. Jake contacted Earth Command directly. He explained the situation to Admiral Claire Bennett, who commanded all of Earth's military forces. She listened without interrupting, then told him to escort the Keltharan ship to Mars orbit while Earth's leaders decided what to do. The news reached Earth within hours, and the planet exploded into debate. President Andrew Hayes called an emergency session of the United Earth Assembly in Geneva. Representatives from every nation argued passionately. Some wanted to help the aliens, others feared bringing down the wrath of the Galactic Council. Still others worried about diseases or cultural contamination. Outside the assembly building, protests filled the streets. Thousands of people held signs supporting the refugees. Thousands more demanded they be sent away. News channels broadcast the arguments 24 hours a day. Everyone had an opinion, and everyone was certain they were right. Dr. Helen Carter, one of Earth's leading biologists, was given permission to board the Keltharan ship. She brought a medical team with her, and what she found made her cry. The Keltharan were starving. Their ship's systems were failing, and they had been rationing food and water for months. Many were sick or injured, and their alien biology made treatment difficult. Helen met Keltharan children, who the adults called sparklings, because of how brightly they glowed. The children were scared but curious. They had never seen a human before, and they reached out carefully to touch Helen's skin, fascinated by its opacity. She held their hands and promised them that Earth would not turn them away. She hoped she was telling the truth. The debate in Geneva lasted 3 days. President Andrew Hayes let everyone speak their mind, but in the end he asked one simple question. What did it say about humanity if they gained the stars only to repeat the same cruelty and cowardice they had shown on Earth? What was the point of all their technology and progress if they did not become better people? The vote was close, but it passed. Earth would grant asylum to the Keltharan. They would be given land, resources, and protection. Earth would face the consequences of that choice, whatever they might be. When Jake told Whisper of Dawn the news, the old alien's body lit up so brightly it hurt to look at directly. It was joy, pure and overwhelming. The Keltharan had been rejected by a galaxy full of advanced civilizations. They had been saved by the one species that Galaxy claimed was too primitive and violent to join them. The irony was not lost on anyone. The Keltharan settlement was built in a valley in New Zealand, surrounded by mountains and clear lakes. The location was chosen carefully. It was remote enough to give the aliens privacy while they adjusted to their new home, but close enough to cities that humans and Keltharan could interact and learn from each other. The Keltharan named it Haven, though they also had their own name for it that sounded like wind chimes singing in a breeze. Engineer Paul Henderson led the construction project. He had expected to simply build houses and facilities using human designs, but the Keltharan had other ideas. They were skilled engineers themselves, and they wanted to contribute to their new home. What resulted was something neither species could have created alone: buildings that seemed to grow naturally from the landscape, using human sustainable technology combined with Keltharan biological engineering. The structures were beautiful, functional, and unlike anything else on Earth. Maria Lopez started the first school where human and Keltharan children learned together. The young Keltharan, the Sparklings, were incredibly curious. They asked endless questions about Earth, about humans, about everything they saw. Human children were equally fascinated by classmates whose skin glowed with changing patterns that showed their emotions. Happy Sparklings glowed bright yellow and orange. Sad ones turned deep blue and purple. Excited ones practically sparkled with rapid rainbow flashes. Not everything went smoothly. Cultural differences caused misunderstandings almost daily. The Keltharan did not understand private property the way humans did. They came from a communal society where everything was shared freely. Taking something without asking was not theft to them. It was just using available resources. Humans had to carefully explain concepts of ownership, and the Keltharan struggled to understand why anyone would claim exclusive rights to objects they were not actively using. Humans had their own difficulties. The Keltharan could not hide their emotions because their feelings literally showed on their skin. They found human attempts to conceal emotions confusing and sometimes frightening. When a human smiled while feeling sad inside, the Keltharan saw it as a form of deception. It took time and patience for both species to understand that neither way was wrong, just different. 6 months after the Keltharan arrived, Earth received its first official communication from the Galactic Council. Ambassador Kyle Rogers, who had been hastily appointed to handle extraterrestrial relations, read the message with growing disbelief and anger. The Council accused Earth of violating quarantine protocols and harboring genetic deviance. They demanded the Keltharan be surrendered immediately for what they called proper processing. The threat was barely hidden. Comply or face the consequences. Kyle wrote Earth's response himself, checking every word with President Andrew Hayes before sending it. Earth rejected the Council's authority over its internal affairs. The Keltharan were under Earth's protection, and they would not be surrendered. Furthermore, Earth demanded to know what proper processing meant and why the Council considered genocide an acceptable solution to genetic diversity. The Council never answered those questions. Instead, they issued a declaration that changed everything. Earth was now classified as a rogue world, outside Council law and protection. Any species that wanted to claim Earth's solar system was free to do so without Council interference. It was an open invitation for conquest, and everyone knew which species would answer that invitation first. The Vryn Empire had not forgotten the Keltharan. To the Vryn, allowing even one Keltharan to live was an insult to their authority. That Earth, a quarantined primitive world, dared to shelter them was an outrage that demanded response. Admiral Claire Bennett had been preparing for this moment since the day the Keltharan arrived. While diplomats exchanged messages and politicians debated, she had quietly mobilized Earth's defenses. The Keltharan were not warriors, but they were brilliant scientists and engineers. They shared everything they knew about Galactic Council technology, about ship designs and weapon systems and defensive shields. It was not much compared to the Council's vast resources, but it was infinitely more than Earth had possessed before. Physicist Derek Shaw worked day and night with a Keltharan scientist named Crystal Thought. Together they achieved something remarkable. They adapted Keltharan shield technology to work with human fusion reactors. The Keltharan had never thought to try this because their own power systems were completely different. The result was defensive shields more powerful than anything either species could have created alone. Across Earth, factories that had been building exploration ships and commercial transports retooled for war. Humanity had never been truly united before. Nations had always competed, argued, and sometimes fought. But the threat of alien invasion accomplished what centuries of diplomacy could not. Earth stood together. The Vryn fleet arrived 3 months after the Council's declaration. 15 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Each ship was massive, larger than Earth's biggest carriers. They broadcast their intentions clearly. Earth would surrender the Keltharan or be pacified by force. The Vryn commander expected humanity to panic and submit. After all, Earth was primitive. They had barely left their own solar system before the quarantine was imposed. Admiral Claire gave the Vryn her answer by launching every combat ship Earth had. 70 vessels of various sizes, from massive carriers to small fast attack craft. To the Vryn, it must have looked like insects challenging an elephant. They had fought 1,000 species and crushed hundreds of rebellions. They had never lost. The first battle happened near Mars. Human pilots flew with a recklessness that shocked the Vryn. Lieutenant Chris Palmer led a squadron of fighters directly into the ventral hangar of a Vryn capital ship while it was launching its own craft. The human fighters dodged defensive fire with maneuvers that should have been impossible, using techniques developed in Earth's atmosphere, where gravity and air resistance created challenges unknown in space combat. Chris and his squadron made it inside the hangar and fired everything they had at the ammunition stores and fuel reserves. The explosion tore the Vryn ship apart from the inside. The capital ship broke into 3 large pieces, and the resulting debris field scattered the entire Vryn formation. It was the first blood, and news of it spread across the galaxy at faster than light speed. A primitive species had destroyed a Vryn capital ship. The unthinkable had happened. The war raged for 3 brutal weeks. The Vryn pushed toward Earth and humanity pushed back with everything they had. Ships were lost. Brave people died protecting their home and the refugees they had promised to shelter. But Earth did not break. Commander Samantha Price became a legend when she rammed her damaged ship into a Vryn dreadnought just as it prepared to fire on Sydney. Her ship was already crippled, life support failing, most of her crew already dead. She could have evacuated, but the dreadnought would have destroyed a city of 5 million people. Samantha made her choice in an instant. The impact disrupted the dreadnought's reactor, and the resulting explosion took out 2 more Vryn vessels. Earth mourned her as a hero. The Keltheran could not fight. Violence was so foreign to their nature that even in self-defense they struggled. But they could heal, and their medical technology was far beyond anything Earth possessed. Keltheran doctors worked in human hospitals, saving thousands of wounded soldiers and civilians. They worked until their own bodies dimmed with exhaustion, then worked some more. They had been given sanctuary, and they would repay that gift with everything they had. Captain Nathan Cross discovered the key to victory almost by accident. He noticed that all Vryn ships synchronized their shields through a central command vessel. If that ship could be disabled, the entire fleet would be vulnerable. Nathan volunteered to lead a boarding team, fully knowing it was likely a suicide mission. His team of 20 soldiers fought their way through corridors filled with Vryn warriors. Each Vryn was larger and stronger than any human, but humans had desperation on their side. They were fighting for their home, for their families, for the refugees they had promised to protect. That desperation made them fierce beyond anything the Vryn had encountered. Nathan's team succeeded, but only 8 of them survived. With the shield network disabled, Earth's fleet tore into the Vryn formation. The alien warships, suddenly vulnerable, began to retreat. They withdrew to the edge of the solar system and jumped to faster than light speed, leaving their dead behind. Earth had won, but everyone knew it was just one battle. The Vryn would return with more ships, more allies. But something had changed in the galaxy. News of Earth's victory spread to every world, every species, every corner of known space. A primitive quarantined species had stood against the Council's enforcers and won. Other species began to whisper. If humanity could defy the Council, perhaps the Council was not as powerful as everyone believed.